Imagine holding a letter that has waited half a century to be read, a letter that was never sent, never opened, until now. What secrets does it hold, hidden away in the folds of time? What emotions, what memories lie between those yellowed pages waiting to be discovered? Behind each word, a love story, a lifetime of longing, and the choices that were never made. This is a tale of lost time, a love never fully realized, and the unexpected ways life has a way of rewriting itself. Sometimes, the past isn't truly gone. It lingers, patiently, waiting for the right moment to return. In the quiet, almost forgotten corner of an antique bookstore in Edinburgh, Scotland, time itself seems to stand still. The room is filled with the musty scent of old paper and leather, the kind that whispers of stories long past. The shelves are lined with forgotten treasures, books whose pages have yellowed with age, their spines cracked from decades of neglect. The soft hum of distant conversation drifts in from another room, but here, in this corner, the world feels far away, as though it has its own rhythm. Nestled between rows of dusty volumes, a vintage leather-bound book sits forgotten, its cover worn and faded with the years. It is one of many, just another relic of the past. But there is something special about it. Perhaps it's the way it catches the light, or the way its edges are frayed, as if it has traveled through time, gathering memories along the way. As the book is gently pulled from the shelf, the weight of its age is palpable. The cover is a deep, rich brown, cracked in places, but still holding a certain dignity, as if it carries the weight of 1,000 stories within it. The pages inside are yellowed and brittle, their texture fragile, yet sturdy enough to tell the tale of a different time. There is something almost sacred about the act of opening this book, like unlocking a door to the past, a door that has remained closed for far too long. Slowly, as the pages are turned, a delicate rustle fills the air, and that's when it happens. Nestled between the worn pages, hidden for what must have been decades, a single handwritten letter is revealed. The paper, discolored with time, is edged with delicate fraying, and the ink, once bold and dark, has faded to a pale gray, but still legible, still telling its story. The seal on the envelope is faded but unmistakable, its wax imprint now a ghost of its former self, like a faded memory. This letter, so long forgotten, has been sealed in time, waiting for the right hands to find it. As the sunlight streams through the window, slanting across the table where the book rests, dust motes dance lazily in the beam. The room, despite its age, is filled with a gentle warmth. The book lies open, its pages fluttering softly in the breeze created by a passing footstep. And there, amidst the quiet and the stillness, the letter sits, its words poised to be read for the very first time in decades. What secrets does it hold? What emotions, long suppressed, will be uncovered? This letter has been waiting for the right moment, for someone to unearth its story and let it breathe once more. And now, as it finally emerges from the shadows of forgotten history, it carries with it not just the weight of its words, but the weight of time itself. The story, lost to the world for so long, is ready to be told. But who is ready to hear it? The letter, a simple piece of paper, now holds the promise of something much greater. A love story lost in time, a mystery waiting to be unraveled, and a past that refuses to stay buried. In the quiet of this old bookstore, history is about to awaken. Back in 1968, in a small London flat, a quiet night wraps itself around the city. Inside a modest room filled with the smell of old paper and worn wood, a young man named Edward Harrison sits alone at a sturdy wooden desk. His chestnut brown hair falls slightly over his forehead, and his serious, thoughtful expression reflects the weight in his heart. The room is dim, lit only by the soft, flickering glow of a single candle. Shadows stretch long across the peeling wallpaper, and the tick of an old clock punctuates the silence like a slow heartbeat. The world outside continues on. Cars pass, distant voices drift up from the street. But here, inside these four walls, time seems to slow down. Edward holds a fountain pen between his fingers, pausing every so often to steady his trembling hand. The page before him is half filled with careful handwriting, the ink slightly smudged where his emotions betrayed his hand. He leans forward, his face illuminated by the candlelight, revealing eyes glassy with unshed tears. He is writing to her, the woman he had loved quietly for years, the woman he had never found the right words for when he had the chance. Now, with circumstances and choices between them, the letter has become his only voice, his final hope to speak the truth he never dared to say aloud. The words don't come easily. Each sentence is a struggle between heart and mind, between regret and hope. He writes of moments they shared, of laughter in rain-soaked parks, of glances across crowded rooms, of words left unsaid. Every letter on the page carries a piece of his heart, raw and trembling. Edward knows, deep down, that this letter may never reach her. Perhaps it's already too late. Life has a way of sweeping people apart, like leaves in the autumn wind. Still, he writes, not to change the past, but to honor it, to let the love he carries find its resting place. The candle flickers as he writes the final words, sealing years of silence into a few fragile lines. He signs his name with a slow, deliberate stroke, then folds the letter carefully and presses it to his lips for a long, silent moment. The wax seal is melted and pressed shut, its symbol faint but enduring. The room feels even quieter now, as if holding its breath along with him. Edward leans back in his chair, staring at the letter in his hand, feeling both a strange peace and a deep sadness. The night stretches on, and in the stillness, one thing becomes clear. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is say what they never dared to say, and let it go into the world, even if no one ever hears it. In that moment, by the dying light of a single candle, Edward's love, unspoken for so long, finally has a voice. In a quiet corner of an antique bookstore, nestled along a cobbled street in Edinburgh, Scotland, time seems to move slower. The shop is a cozy labyrinth of towering shelves, stacked high with leather-bound books, old maps, and forgotten treasures. Dust motes swirl lazily in the shafts of afternoon sunlight, streaming through tall windows, casting a golden glow over the worn wooden floors. Behind the polished oak counter stands Claire Thompson, a woman in her early 60s with kind silver-gray hair pinned neatly back, dressed in a beige cardigan over a soft green blouse. Her gentle hands move lovingly over the covers of the books she sorts, treating each one like an old friend. The rich smell of old paper and the faint aroma of coffee from a small back room blend into the comforting scent of the shop. On this particular afternoon, while organizing a collection of donated books, Claire notices an unusually worn, leather-bound volume tucked away behind a stack of newer titles. Curious, she draws it out, feeling the weight of history in her hands. The cover, cracked and faded with time, carries no title. As she carefully flips through its brittle pages, something unexpected slips free. A yellowed envelope with a faded wax seal. Claire's breath catches. She turns the envelope over with reverence, noting the delicate, old-fashioned handwriting on its front. It's addressed simply, "To my dearest Margaret." A soft tremor runs through her fingers. For a long moment, she just stands there, staring at the letter as if it might vanish at any second. In the stillness of the shop, the air feels charged, as if she stumbled upon a secret the world had long forgotten. She glances around the store, as if seeking a witness to this tiny miracle. Setting the book carefully aside, Claire walks to the reading nook by the window, a small armchair, bathed in light, and sits down, the letter cradled gently in her lap. She knows she should respect its privacy, but something about the fragile, waiting nature of it tugs at her heart. Claire gazes out the window at the bustling Edinburgh street, torn between curiosity and the knowledge that this letter represents someone's long-buried story. The question lingers in her mind. Who was Margaret? And what words had been locked away inside this envelope for so many years? The bookstore, usually a place of quiet comfort, now feels alive with possibility. As Claire sits there, the letter resting against her palm like a heartbeat, she realizes she holds not just a piece of paper, but a thread connecting past and present. A story waiting to be told. A life perhaps waiting to be changed. The sunlight shifts, casting a soft glow across the letter's worn surface. Claire knows one thing with absolute certainty. She cannot ignore this discovery. Some letters, even after half a century, are still waiting to find their way home. The bell above the shop door jingles as a cool breeze slips in from the Edinburgh street. Claire looks up from the letter just as her son, Ben Thompson, steps through the door. In his mid-20s, Ben is full of quiet charm, with short, curly hair and a red flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves. He carries a box of books under one arm and a paper coffee cup in the other. "Afternoon, Mum," he says, setting the box down. His warm brown eyes scan her face, noting the distant look in her eyes and the letter cradled delicately in her lap. "Everything all right?" Claire gently smooths the envelope. "I found something," she says softly, her voice touched with wonder. "It fell out of an old book from the donation pile. It's a letter, written in 1968. Look, addressed to someone named Margaret." Ben kneels beside her chair, curiosity already lighting up his face. He reaches for the letter, but doesn't take it, waiting for permission. Claire nods and hands it to him gently, as though it might crumble if touched too quickly. Ben examines the seal, the parchment, the careful handwriting. "This is incredible," he murmurs. "It's like a time capsule." He glances up. "Have you read it?" Claire shakes her head. "Not yet. I wasn't sure if I should, but something about it feels important, like it needs to be seen, maybe even delivered." Ben sits on the floor beside her, his posture thoughtful. "Margaret. It's a fairly common name, but if she was old enough to receive a love letter in the late 60s, she'd be in her 70s or 80s now. We could try to track her down." Claire tilts her head, a cautious smile playing at her lips. "You think so?" Ben nods. "Absolutely. You always told me that every book has a journey, right? Maybe this letter does too. Maybe it's not too late to help it reach the end of its story." A silence settles between them, gentle, full of unspoken hope. The store feels different now, like it holds not just old stories, but living ones, waiting to unfold. Outside, the street bustles on, unaware that in this little bookshop, a forgotten message from half a century ago has found new hands and perhaps a second chance. Ben stands, carefully placing the letter back in its envelope. Let's find her, Mum. Let's see if Margaret's still out there. I think someone needs to hear what's inside this. Claire smiles, her heart stirred by her son's sense of purpose. She reaches out and gently squeezes his hand. Then let's begin. The next morning, the Edinburgh sky is awash of soft grey, and a light drizzle taps against the bookstore's windows. Inside, the shop is quietly alive. Golden lamplight glowing over the worn spines of old books and the faint aroma of fresh coffee lingering in the air. At the counter, Ben sits hunched over his laptop, fingers tapping steadily as he scrolls through pages of online records, lost in the unfolding mystery. Claire watches from the doorway to the back room, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. "Any luck?" she asks hopefully. Ben exhales, eyes never leaving the screen. There are a few Margarets that match the time frame. If Edward wrote this in London in 1968, and it was found in a book donated here, we might be looking at someone who moved, maybe even someone who's no longer listed under the same name. Claire steps closer, placing her coffee down beside him. What about Edward? The signature was just E.H., but maybe there's something more in the letter. Ben nods. I thought about that. If I had the full contents of the letter, maybe there'd be more clues. Names, places, something personal we can trace. He pauses, looking up. Would it be all right if I opened it? Claire hesitates, then slowly nods. I think this is bigger than us now. Maybe it's time someone knew what it said. With careful hands, Ben breaks the wax seal. The paper inside crackles softly as he unfolds it, revealing elegant, emotional handwriting. His eyes scan the words, and his expression shifts from curiosity to wonder to quiet sadness. He loved her, he murmurs. Truly, it's a farewell letter. Edward was being sent away, maybe for military service. He wrote it just days before he left, but he says he was afraid to leave without telling her how much she meant to him. Claire leans in. Does he mention her last name? Ben nods. Margaret Lewis. Claire straightens. Lewis. That narrows it. Ben opens a new tab and begins typing. Margaret Lewis, born in the 1940s, lived in London during the late 60s, moved to the north of England. There's a record of a Margaret Lewis who now lives in Whitby. Claire's eyes light up. Whitby? That's by the sea, isn't it? Ben smiles. It is. Small coastal town. Peaceful. I'll reach out to the local library. Maybe they know her. If she's part of the community, someone will. As rain patters gently against the windows, a sense of quiet purpose fills the air. The search has begun, not just for a person, but for a story left unfinished. And in that moment, Claire and Ben aren't just mother and son running a bookshop. They're bridge builders, carrying a message across 50 years of silence. The wind sweeps gently through the cobbled streets of Whitby, rustling the hanging flower baskets outside the quaint seaside library. Inside, the atmosphere is hushed, filled with the soft turning of pages and the distant hum of a kettle from the staff room. A librarian named Elsie, in her mid-60s, with wispy white hair and reading glasses perched low on her nose, picks up the phone. Whitby Public Library. Elsie speaking, she says, her voice warm and lilting. On the other end, Ben's voice comes through, clear and kind. Hello, I hope I'm not disturbing. My name is Ben Thompson, and I'm calling from a bookstore in Edinburgh. I know this might sound strange, but I'm trying to find a woman named Margaret Lewis. I believe she lives, or lived, in your town. It's about an old letter that was never delivered. There's a pause. Then Elsie replies, Margaret Lewis, you say? Yes, I know her. Lovely woman. Quiet, but always brings biscuits when she visits. She's lived here for years. Is she all right? Ben smiles into the phone. Yes, as far as I know, she's fine. I actually have a letter that was meant for her. From 1968. There's another moment of stillness on the line, and then Elsie says, more softly now, goodness, that's nearly 50 years. Who on earth would still be holding on to a letter from then? Ben exhales. That's the thing. It was lost, forgotten in a book donated to our shop, but it was clearly meant for her. And I think it's time she saw it. Elsie's voice grows thoughtful. Margaret's not one for visitors, keeps to herself these days. Lost her husband a long time ago. But something in your voice tells me this matters. It does, Ben says gently. I believe this could bring her peace, or at least something she never knew she needed. Elsie offers a faint chuckle. You've got a kind heart, young man. All right, I can't give out her address, but if you'd like, I can pass on a message. You write me an email with your number, and I'll make sure it gets to her. Thank you, Ben says, relief washing over him. Really, thank you. As he hangs up, he looks over at Claire, who's been listening quietly. Her eyes are misty. Do you think she'll respond? Ben nods slowly. If she's anything like the woman described in the letter, I think she'll want to know. Outside, the sun breaks through the clouds over Edinburgh, casting golden light across the bookstore window. For the first time, it feels like the story might finally begin to close the circle, one step closer to a truth that has waited half a century to come home. The early afternoon sun casts a warm golden glow over the quaint seaside town of Whitby. Gulls call overhead, and a soft breeze rustles through the flower beds outside a small stone cottage perched near the edge of a hill overlooking the sea. Inside, the living room is quiet and cozy. Knitted cushions on a floral sofa, shelves lined with old photo frames, and the gentle tick of an antique clock on the mantel. Margaret Lewis, now in her late 70s, sits in her favorite high-backed chair by the window. Her long silver hair is tied in a neat bun, and she wears a soft blue cardigan over a floral blouse. A steaming cup of tea rests on the table beside her, untouched. Her eyes are closed, face turned toward the sunlight, lost in thought. The doorbell rings. Startled from her reverie, Margaret rises slowly and walks to the door, her footsteps soft on the wooden floor. When she opens it, she finds Elsie, the local librarian, standing there with a kind smile and a manila envelope in her hands. Elsie, Margaret says, surprised. What a lovely visit. I hope you don't mind me dropping by, Elsie replies gently, stepping inside. I received a call from a young man from Edinburgh. He asked me to give this to you. She hands Margaret the envelope with care. Margaret furrows her brow, puzzled. What is it? Elsie shrugs slightly. A letter. One that was meant for you. A long time ago. Margaret's breath catches. She carries the envelope to the table with trembling hands, her fingers brushing against the aged paper as she opens it. The seal has already been broken, but the letter is carefully refolded inside. Margaret slides it out, unfolding it slowly, recognizing the handwriting before even reading the words. Her lips part in a quiet gasp. The room seems to fall away. The light from the window glows brighter, reflecting the glimmer in her tear-filled eyes. She reads the first few lines in silence, her fingers gently tracing Edward's name at the bottom of the page. For a long moment, she doesn't speak. Elsie watches, concerned. "Margaret, are you all right?" Margaret looks up slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's from him. Edward Harrison." Elsie's eyes widen. "From all those years ago?" Margaret nods, her voice shaking. "He wrote to me, and I never knew." She clutches the letter to her chest, eyes brimming with memory and emotion. Outside, the breeze picks up, carrying with it the scent of salt and spring blossoms. In that quiet room, time folds in on itself, and something long buried stirs gently back to life. Later that evening, the sun dips low behind the horizon, casting a warm amber hue across the sea outside Margaret's window. Inside her cottage, the fireplace crackles softly, its light dancing across the walls. Margaret sits on the floor, beside an old wooden chest she hasn't opened in years, its brass latch worn, but still intact. She unlatches it slowly, revealing a collection of memories: sepia-toned photographs, dried corsages, yellowed postcards from distant cities, and a worn-out notebook with Edward's initials etched into the leather. The scent of lavender and aged paper fills the air, stirring something deep within her. She pulls out a photograph. London, 1967. A younger Margaret, no older than 20, laughing on the steps of the National Gallery. Beside her stands Edward, looking dashing in his navy coat, his chestnut hair tousled by the wind. His hand is resting protectively on her shoulder, his smile full of hope. Margaret exhales shakily, holding the photo to her chest. She closes her eyes, and suddenly, she's back there. Flashback. The streets of London bustle with energy. Red buses, clinking teacups from sidewalk cafes, and the chatter of young lovers in Hyde Park. Margaret and Edward stroll hand in hand beneath blooming cherry blossoms. He's talking excitedly about a poetry reading, and she's pretending to be annoyed, but her eyes gleam with affection. "I'm serious," Edward says with a grin. "One day I'll write something so beautiful, they'll teach it in schools." Margaret laughs. "Then promise me, when you do, you'll read it to me first." He stops walking, turning to face her. "I promise," he says, his eyes locked on hers. She remembers the way his voice trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from depth, from certainty. Back to the present. Margaret opens her eyes, blinking back tears. The letter still lies beside her on the rug. She picks it up again and reads the last line slowly. "If life has taken us to different shores, know that I loved you. I still do." Her hands shake. She places the letter gently beside the photograph and leans back against the chair, staring at the ceiling. The silence in the room is no longer hollow. It's filled with echoes of laughter, with unsaid goodbyes, and with a love that time couldn't quite erase. The fire crackles on. Outside, the moon rises, casting silver light over the sea, and inside her heart, something long frozen begins to thaw. In a quiet corner of a small, warmly lit bookstore in Boston, the evening rush has settled into stillness. The scent of old paper and freshly brewed coffee drifts through the aisles. The shop's lights cast a soft amber glow over the hardwood floors, and outside the wide front window, snowflakes have begun to fall gently, dusting the sidewalk in white. Claire Thompson, now in her early 60s, stands behind the counter, her silver-gray hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. She wears a beige cardigan and half-moon reading glasses perched on her nose as she finishes logging the day's sales. A cup of chamomile tea steams nearby. She looks up as her son, Ben, enters from the back room, carrying a small stack of children's books under one arm. "Just finished reading to the last little one," Ben says with a smile, brushing snow from his red flannel shirt. "She said this place feels like a storybook." Claire chuckles softly. She's not wrong. Ben sets the books down and takes a seat beside her. "Have you heard anything new from the woman in Whitby?" Claire nods slowly, reaching into the drawer and pulling out a folded note. "Margaret wrote again. She said reading that letter felt like waking up from a dream she didn't know she was in." Ben leans forward, curious. "It really shook her, didn't it?" Claire's gaze drifts to the bookstore window. Imagine finding out, decades later, that someone once loved you enough to write a goodbye they thought you'd never read. That kind of truth. It doesn't just touch the heart, it rewrites it. Ben's expression softens. "Do you think it was fate? That we were supposed to find that letter?" Claire considers this for a moment, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of the note. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just that life has a way of circling back when something unfinished needs to be seen through." They sit in silence for a while, listening to the ticking clock above the register and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Outside, the snow continues to fall. "I used to think stories were just words on paper," Ben says quietly. "But that letter, it was more than a story. It was someone's truth." Claire smiles, her eyes reflecting both pride and thoughtfulness. And now, that truth has a second chance. The camera lingers on the two of them in the stillness of the shop, a mother and son bound not just by blood, but by a quiet act of kindness that unknowingly bridged generations. A forgotten letter, a life touched, and perhaps the beginning of something new. A soft morning light bathes the Boston bookstore in a pale golden hue as Claire wraps the letter carefully inside a crisp, cream-colored envelope. She seals it gently, running her fingers across the smooth paper as if offering a silent blessing. On the front, she writes the address in elegant cursive: Margaret Lewis, Whitby, England. Ben watches her from across the counter, sipping his coffee thoughtfully. "Are you sure you don't want to include a note?" he asks. Claire smiles faintly, tucking a small card inside before sealing the package. "Just a few words. No explanation. Some things don't need to be explained. They're meant to be felt." Outside, the city is waking up. Car horns, hurried footsteps on the sidewalks, the distant whistle of a train. Yet inside the bookstore, time seems to slow as they prepare to send the letter on its final rightful journey. Later, Claire and Ben walk together to the nearest post office, the letter nestled safely in a padded envelope. Snow crunches underfoot as they make their way down the bustling street. The post office bell jingles as they step inside, the familiar scent of paper, ink, and old wood filling the air. Claire approaches the counter where an older gentleman in a blue postal uniform greets her warmly. "England, you said?" he asks, checking the address. She nods. "Whitby." He stamps the package carefully, placing it in the outgoing international tray. "Should get there within the week," he says with a smile. Claire lingers for a moment, watching as the letter disappears behind the counter, swallowed into the intricate dance of deliveries, customs, and distant destinations. It feels like letting go of something precious, but also like setting it free. Ben touches her shoulder gently. "You did the right thing, Mum." Claire smiles, though there's a mistiness in her eyes. "I hope it finds her when she needs it most." They exit the post office, stepping back into the crisp winter morning. Around them, Boston hums with life. Street vendors setting up their carts, shopkeepers sweeping their steps, children bundled in bright scarves, laughing as they race down the sidewalks. Yet in Claire's heart, everything feels still. She lifts her gaze to the pale blue sky. Somewhere across an ocean, an old love is about to awaken. And for the first time in a long time, Claire feels not just like a keeper of stories, but a part of one. The seaside town of Whitby, England, wakes to the gentle cries of gulls and the rhythmic whisper of waves brushing against the stone harbor. A thin mist clings to the cobbled streets, weaving around the pastel-colored cottages and narrow alleyways. In her small, ivy-clad cottage, perched near the cliffs, Margaret Lewis sits at a wooden kitchen table, savoring her morning ritual. A cup of strong black tea in a delicate china cup. Her silver hair is neatly pinned in a bun, and she wears a soft lavender shawl draped around her shoulders. Outside her window, her garden still slumbers under a blanket of winter frost, and the sea beyond stretches endlessly into the mist. A sharp rap at the door breaks the stillness. Startled, Margaret rises slowly, her joints stiff but determined. She opens the door to find a cheerful postman in a navy coat, his breath misting in the crisp air. In his gloved hand, he holds a small package, cream-colored, bearing an unfamiliar American postmark. "Morning, Miss Lewis. Special delivery for you. All the way from the States," he says with a smile. Margaret blinks in surprise, accepting the package with careful hands. "Thank you," she murmurs, watching as the postman tips his hat and disappears into the fog. She closes the door and returns to a chair by the window, the package resting heavily in her lap. Her fingers trace the handwriting, her heart fluttering with a strange mixture of curiosity and dread. Something about the envelope feels different, heavier than mere paper should be, as if it carries the weight of unseen memories. After a long pause, Margaret tears open the seal with trembling fingers. Inside, she finds the letter, yellowed with age, edges delicate, but the ink still surprisingly legible. And tucked alongside it, a small note in crisp handwriting, found between the pages of an old book. Thought it might belong to you. Claire and Ben, Boston, USA. Margaret's hands tighten around the letter. A shiver runs through her, not from the cold, but from a sudden, unexplainable certainty. Whatever was written inside would change something deep within her. For a long moment, she simply sits there, listening to the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. The world outside seems to hold its breath. Finally, gathering her courage, Margaret unfolds the fragile paper. Her eyes scan the words written decades ago by a hand she once knew by heart. A gasp escapes her lips. The room seems to sway around her. The letter isn't just a message, it's a heartbeat from the past, a confession, a farewell, a love that never truly let go. Tears gather in the corners of her eyes as she presses the letter to her chest, feeling its pulse against her own. Outside, the mist begins to lift from the town, and a soft golden light spills across the harbor, touching everything it meets with a sense of quiet rebirth. Inside her little cottage, Margaret Lewis realizes that some stories, no matter how delayed, always find their way home. Margaret sits at the same wooden table where she spent countless hours over the years, but today, everything feels different. The letter rests before her, its words both a connection and a weight, pulling her back into a past she thought she'd buried long ago. The soft crackle of the fireplace in the corner breaks the stillness of the room as Margaret gently unfolds the yellowed paper once more. Her hands, though wrinkled with age, hold the letter with the same reverence she once held the man who wrote it. The words on the page are familiar, and yet they feel like the first time she's truly seen them. The handwriting is unmistakable. Edward's. His words, though dated, still carry the warmth and urgency of a love that had once burned so brightly in her life. My dearest Margaret, I write this with a heart full of sorrow, knowing that the love I offer will never reach you in the way I hoped. The distance between us is too great, and the paths we must walk are too far apart. But I need you to know, from the very core of my soul, that I will always love you, no matter where life takes us. Her fingers tremble as she reads further, each sentence drawing her deeper into the memory of a young woman in love, full of dreams and promises. The scent of roses, the sound of Edward's laughter, and the warmth of his embrace flood her senses, transporting her back to the days when their love was as vibrant and real as the sky above London. Margaret closes her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to be enveloped by the memories. The years she's lived without Edward now feel like a shadow, a life that was only half-lived. She recalls their last conversation, the one that had been interrupted by the separation that neither of them had wanted but could not avoid. She'd asked him, tearfully, to promise he would return, but fate had taken him elsewhere, and the promises made between them had remained unfulfilled. The years had passed, and with them, the dream of their love had faded into the backdrop of her life. But now, the letter, written so many years ago, has arrived like a bridge across time, connecting the woman she is today with the girl she once was, the girl who loved Edward with all of her heart. Tears fall freely down her face as Margaret reads the final words of the letter. If fate allows, one day our paths will cross again. Until then, know that you are the love of my life. Forever yours, Edward. The letter falls softly from her hands, resting against her lap, as Margaret gazes out the window at the waves crashing against the cliffs. In that moment, she realizes that some loves don't fade with time. They simply wait. A soft knock at the door breaks her reverie, and Margaret wipes her tears, quickly gathering herself. As she opens the door, the postman from earlier smiles warmly. Another letter for you, Miss Lewis, he says, handing her another package. This one, larger and wrapped in brown paper, came all the way from Boston. Margaret stands there for a moment, the weight of the first letter still lingering in her hands. Without a word, she steps back inside, the second letter clutched in her grasp. The story isn't over. In fact, it may be just beginning. Margaret's hands tremble as she sits at the table, staring at the second package resting before her. The air in the room feels thick with anticipation, as if the letter she holds will change everything once more. She carefully unties the brown twine, peeling back the paper with a gentleness that betrays the emotions swirling inside her. Inside, there's a letter, folded neatly, and a small photograph. Margaret picks up the photo first. It's black and white, aged with time. She stares at the image, her breath catching in her throat. It's a picture of her, Margaret, standing in front of a small cottage, her silver hair long and flowing, her eyes looking into the distance as if caught in a moment of reflection. It feels like another life, a woman she no longer recognizes, her younger self, standing in a place filled with memories, now far removed from the life she's lived since. With a deep breath, she places the photograph carefully on the table and opens the letter, her fingers gently unfolding the creased paper. The handwriting is neat but unfamiliar, and the words seem to leap from the page as she begins to read. Dear Miss Lewis, my name is Claire Thompson. I'm writing to you about a letter you may not have received. It was written by Edward Harrison, a man who loved you dearly. My son Ben and I found it while sorting through some old books. It has traveled a long way to reach you, and I believe you should finally hear the words it contains. Margaret's heart skips a beat. Edward's name. It sends a rush of memories flooding her mind, and she pauses, closing her eyes for a moment. The years, the distance, the silence. It all felt like a lifetime ago. But here, in her hands, his love is alive once more, written on this fragile paper. She reads on, her eyes blurry with tears. Edward spoke of you often, and though the time and circumstances parted you, I wanted you to know that his love for you never wavered. He kept that love with him, even when life led him down different paths. I wanted to make sure you knew how much he cared for you, and that you weren't forgotten. The words cut deep into Margaret's soul. She had spent so many years in silence, the loss of Edward buried beneath the routines of life. But this letter, this connection to him, rips open the wound she thought had long healed. She puts the letter down for a moment, her hands trembling as she looks out the window. The sea crashes against the cliffs below, its rhythmic sound filling the room. The world outside feels unchanged, yet inside, everything is different now. The letter has pulled her back to a time she thought she had let go of, to a love that never truly ended, even if she had tried to move on. Margaret picks up the letter again and reads the final lines. Edward wanted you to know that his love for you never died. It was always there, waiting. We hope this letter brings you some peace, and that you can finally know the depth of his feelings for you. With warmest regards, Claire Thompson. The tears finally fall freely down her cheeks. She presses the letter to her chest, holding it close, as if it can bridge the gap between her and Edward, between the past and the present. In that moment, Margaret realizes that some things never truly fade. Love, even if it's not lived out as one would hope, lingers in the heart, waiting for the right moment to return. And now, after all these years, that moment has arrived. Margaret rises slowly, looking at the photograph one last time. She traces her fingers over her younger self, wondering what might have been if she had known that Edward's love had never faded. Perhaps it's never too late to rewrite the story, to let love find its way back when the time is right. The sea continues to roar outside, echoing the pulse of her heart, a heart that is now full once more. The morning after reading Edward's second letter, Margaret wakes with a quiet sense of clarity. The weight of the words still presses gently on her chest, but they no longer feel like a burden. Instead, they feel like the opening of a door she thought had long been closed. She sits by the window in her favorite armchair, a cup of tea in hand, watching the waves crash against the cliffs below. The world is as it always has been, but something inside her has shifted. She feels a stirring of hope, the kind of hope that had been buried for decades. Margaret looks at the letter again, now resting on the table beside her, its message clear in her heart. The letter has given her something unexpected, a sense of closure, but also a new beginning. Edward's love, though never realized in the way they both had hoped, had not vanished. It was still alive in his words, in the memories that had once filled her days. And now, it's as though his love has circled back, like a ship returning to port after a long journey. Margaret picks up her pen and begins to write. She writes to Claire Thompson, thanking her for finding the letter, for bringing it back into her life, and for allowing her to know Edward's heart in a way she hadn't imagined possible. As she writes, a sense of peace settles over her. It's as if, with each word, she's letting go of the pain, the longing, and the regrets that had haunted her for so long. Outside, the sky is brightening as the sun begins to rise higher. Margaret looks out the window once more and smiles softly to herself. The sea below glistens in the morning light, and for the first time in many years, she feels the warmth of possibility in the air. She has lived a full life, but something in her has awakened again, a desire to live fully, to embrace whatever comes next, without fear or hesitation. The letter wasn't just a message from Edward. It was a catalyst. It was the reminder that love doesn't always follow the path we expect. It can come in waves. It can arrive late. And sometimes it can find its way back to us when we need it most. Margaret sets the pen down, feeling a quiet satisfaction. There's no more need for longing, for wondering, what if? The story she had once thought was over is still being written, just in a way she hadn't expected. She's ready for the next chapter. She places the letter in an envelope, sealing it with care, and looks out the window one last time before slipping it into the mail. Today is a new day, one filled with the promise of fresh beginnings. With one final glance at the waves below, Margaret steps away from the window, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. She knows that the love she once thought was lost has made its way back to her, and with it, her heart is finally at peace. Weeks pass, and Margaret returns to her daily rhythm in Whitby, but now there is a newfound lightness in her step. The letter from Claire Thompson, along with the memories of Edward's love, have given her a renewed sense of purpose. She no longer feels bound by the weight of what-ifs, but rather, she feels liberated by the understanding that some loves, no matter how distant or lost in time, still have a way of finding us when we need them most. One sunny afternoon, while walking along the cliffs near her cottage, Margaret's gaze is drawn to the horizon. The sea stretches endlessly, shimmering in the late afternoon sun. A breeze lifts her silver hair as she exhales slowly, feeling the cool air on her skin. She smiles as she lets go of the past, the ocean's steady rhythm offering her a sense of peace. Her steps take her down a narrow path leading to the shore, a place she used to visit with Edward so many years ago. The stones beneath her feet are familiar, the saltwater scent of the air comforting. She stands there, overlooking the water, and for the first time in a long time, she feels connected to something larger than herself. The past is no longer a place of sorrow, but a place of gratitude. Suddenly, her phone buzzes in her pocket, snapping her from her reverie. She pulls it out and sees a message from Claire. The simple text reads, "Margaret, I just wanted to thank you again for your kind letter. It meant the world to me and Ben. I think of you often, and I hope someday we can meet in person." Margaret feels a wave of warmth wash over her. She never expected to hear from Claire again, let alone form a connection with the woman who had unknowingly reconnected her to a love long lost. The thought of meeting Claire in person stirs a sense of curiosity and excitement within her. With a soft chuckle, Margaret types a response. "Thank you, Claire. I would love that. Perhaps one day we can sit together and share stories of the past. I am forever grateful for the gift you gave me." She presses send, then tucks the phone back into her pocket. As the evening light begins to fade, Margaret feels a sense of calm settle over her heart. The sea continues to crash against the rocks, but it's no longer a symbol of longing or heartache. It's a symbol of acceptance. The letter that had waited 50 years to be read has done its work. It has returned a piece of Margaret's soul that she thought was lost forever, and it has opened the door to new possibilities, new connections, and a future she had never imagined. As the sun dips lower into the horizon, Margaret turns and begins the walk back toward her cottage, each step lighter than the last. She knows that life will continue to surprise her, just as love has, and for the first time in many years, she welcomes the unknown. The love she shared with Edward, and now the friendship that's blossoming with Claire, have taught her that it's never too late to find something meaningful, something worth cherishing. And in that knowledge, Margaret feels truly free. A few months pass, and Margaret finds herself traveling to London, a city she hasn't visited in years. She had received a letter from Claire, confirming their plans to meet in person. Margaret, though excited, feels a sense of nervousness flutter in her chest. The bond they had formed through their letters was special, but meeting face to face felt like stepping into unknown territory. Could their connection be just as strong in person? Would the years of distance between them matter? She arrives at a small cafe near the Thames, a charming spot with rustic tables and warm, inviting decor. It's a cold morning, and the mist from the river clings to the air, giving the city an ethereal, almost dreamlike quality. Margaret, wrapped in a cozy coat and scarf, stands at the entrance, scanning the cafe for Claire. Then, as if on cue, the door opens and Claire steps inside. Margaret's heart skips a beat. Claire is everything she imagined, warm and welcoming, with the same kind eyes that had once appeared in the photograph. She's dressed casually, but with an elegance that comes naturally, and as she smiles at Margaret, it's like the years between them fall away. "Margaret, it's so wonderful to finally meet you," Claire says, her voice full of warmth. Margaret's nerves dissolve as she takes a step forward, her face breaking into a smile. "It's a pleasure, Claire. I feel like I've known you forever." They embrace briefly, both women laughing softly as they pull apart, the weight of the years between them fading in an instant. They take a seat at a corner table by the window, where the soft light of the afternoon streams through, illuminating their faces. For the next hour, the conversation flows effortlessly, as if they've been friends for much longer than the months they've known each other. They share stories of their lives, their joys, their losses. Margaret talks about her years in Whitby, the small cottage by the cliffs, and her newfound peace after reading the letters. Claire, in turn, shares her own story, how she had always been curious about the letters and what they might mean to Margaret, the woman who had captured Edward's heart. "I never thought the letter would reach you," Claire says softly, stirring her tea. "I just wanted you to know what he felt. I didn't expect it to mean so much to you." Margaret reaches across the table and places her hand gently over Claire's. "It meant everything. You have no idea how much peace it brought me. It's like Edward's love found its way back to me after all these years." Claire smiles, a look of understanding passing between them. They both know that the love they are talking about is not just the love between Margaret and Edward. It's the love between two women who have come together through time, through memories, and through the simple act of sharing a letter that had waited half a century to be read. As they continue to talk, the afternoon fades into evening, and the cafe empties. The two women linger, reluctant to end their time together. Margaret realizes that this meeting, this connection with Claire, has given her something she never expected, a sense of closure, yes, but also a new chapter, one that she's ready to embrace with open arms. When they finally stand to leave, Claire insists on walking Margaret to the nearby train station. They step out into the crisp London air, the city alive with the buzz of evening activity. As they walk side by side, Margaret feels a deep sense of gratitude. She has found not only a new friend, but a reminder that life is full of unexpected twists, that love doesn't always follow the path we expect, and that sometimes the most meaningful connections are the ones that take years to unfold. At the train station, they hug goodbye, promising to stay in touch. "Thank you for everything, Claire," Margaret says, her voice full of emotion. "I will always cherish this moment." As Margaret boards the train, she looks out the window at the city that is slowly disappearing into the distance. She smiles to herself, knowing that her story, her journey, is far from over. With Edward's love finally acknowledged and a new friendship blossoming, Margaret feels ready for whatever the future holds. The train pulls away, and as she watches London fade into the horizon, Margaret realizes that sometimes it's never too late to rewrite your story. Margaret returns to Whitby after her heartwarming meeting with Claire in London. The train ride had been peaceful, but her mind was alive with thoughts of the time they had spent together. She felt lighter somehow, as though something inside her had shifted, marking a final chapter in the long saga of Edward's love and her life's unexpected twists. The cottage in Whitby feels different now. As she walks through the door, Margaret takes in the familiar sights, the crackling fire in the hearth, the flowers in bloom on the windowsill, the well-worn rug underfoot. But today, there's a subtle change. The space feels fuller, more alive. It's as though the air itself has shifted, filling with possibility. She sits at her desk, the one Edward had once written his letters on, and unpacks a small parcel Claire had given her just before she left London. Inside is a simple leather-bound journal with a note tucked inside that reads, "For new stories, new memories, from Claire, with love." Margaret smiles at the thought. She opens the journal, feeling the soft pages beneath her fingertips, and begins to write. The pen moves across the paper, almost as though it's guiding her. This isn't a letter to Edward. Those words have already been written. Instead, this is a new chapter, a chapter she's ready to write for herself. Her first entry is simple, but filled with emotion. "Today I met a woman who reminded me that love never truly fades. It changes, it evolves, and sometimes it takes the most unexpected form. I've learned that the heart doesn't have to be filled with regrets. It can be full of gratitude for all that was and all that is yet to come." Margaret closes the journal and places it on the desk, her gaze drifting toward the window. The ocean outside sparkles under the midday sun, and she feels the same sense of peace that has been growing inside her since reading the first letter. Edward's love had come back to her when she needed it most, but so had Claire's. And now, she feels ready to share her story with others, whether through letters, through memories, or through the pages of this journal. Her heart no longer feels weighed down by the past. Instead, it's open, full of new connections and stories yet to be written. Margaret realizes that this moment, this peaceful, quiet moment, is exactly where she was meant to be all along. For the first time in years, Margaret feels the fullness of life, not in the regrets of what was lost, but in the quiet joy of what remains and what lies ahead. Love, she understands now, doesn't have to be perfect or even immediate. It can wait, it can grow, and it can return when you least expect it, bringing you exactly what you need when you're ready for it. With the journal in front of her, Margaret takes a deep breath. She knows this is just the beginning of a new chapter, and with a smile, she begins to write.
Love, though sometimes delayed, is never truly lost. Life may separate us from the people we care about or from the dreams we hold dear, but the heart has an incredible ability to wait, heal, and rediscover itself. Sometimes, it takes time for love to return to us in unexpected forms, but it is always worth the wait. Never lose hope in the power of connection, and remember, it's never too late to rewrite your story. If you found this story meaningful, share it with someone who needs a reminder that love and second chances are possible. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales that inspire and uplift. Leave a comment below and let us know how this story touched you, or if you've ever experienced a love that waited for you. Keep writing your own story, there's always more to discover.